Good morning.
Hello.
And we are at SharePoint Saturday Toronto, and we are joined by, please, could you introduce yourself?
My name is Rhia Wieclawek, usually referred to as Rhia W. I work for Elantis Solutions, which is based in Edmonton, Alberta.
Okay. So what do you actually do, Rhia?
That's a good question. I am a solution architect, which means that I do a lot of work with SharePoint and Nintex, mostly to architect out those solutions for our clients to figure out what do they really need, what is that going to look like, and how can those things come together to get what the business needs they require.
Okay, cool. And today you're doing a session on Nintex Document Generation. So could you please enlighten us what this session is talking about?
So the reason I decided to talk about Nintex Document Generation is because I only discovered it within the past little while. Most people who are familiar with Nintex are going to hear document generation and think of Nintex Draw Loop, which is mostly based around Salesforce. So when I learned that I could use it through SharePoint, I actually became angry because what it meant for me was that the past 10 years of my life could have had a lot of time spent for it. So what I talk a bit about in my presentation today is I look at my career over the past 10 years where I've worked as a project administrator, I've worked in project delivery, I've worked in an insurance company doing risk analysis, and how much time I could have saved using that action. It's one action, it's inside of Nintex, it's super easy to set up, and you just set it and forget it, like some hair care places say.
Yeah, perfect. And I just have a question about your clients. So.
Sure.
Do you, like your clients basically are using like document generation actions and mainly focus on document generation, or they actually use other stuff that are available with Nintex as well?
So what's been interesting so far is that I actually only have one client that's using document generation because I have just found that use for it. And it's incredible because it's saving them upwards of, let's say in a single project, it's saving them about 45 minutes a day. And this is great for engineers who go out to the field and they don't want to sit at the end of the day and do a daily report. This automates it for them. It can even attach the document once created and email it to their stakeholders, so they don't need to think about that either. What I'm trying to do with my presentation today is show people that it's a part of the workflow, the workflow and forward package that you get with Nintex anyway. May as well give it a shot, see how easy it is, and try and add it into whatever you're doing. Yeah, I'd like to see more clients using it for sure.
That's really cool. And also there's a question, where do you actually see Nintex in terms of, we're now is like in a world that is cloud first, mobile first, and I think that probably Nintex has something similar as well in the cloud. So how do you see it actually doing versus Microsoft Flow and all that stuff that are already there? Because I know that there's also Nintex Forms, but we also have versus Power Apps.
Right.
So how do you see actually Nintex doing against those?
So that's an interesting question, and I'll put it into two parts. So the first part that you're talking about is the Workflow Cloud. So Nintex Workflow Cloud is something that I haven't dabbled in too much. However, I have been doing beta testing on something that they're going to be releasing probably within the next few months, and I can't speak to it too much, but I am going to say that it's going to make it a lot easier to use, and it's going to allow us to integrate different applications much easier than we can right now. It's going to be fantastic. The other thing is that the Workflow Cloud, it has many of the same connectors that Flow does, and it also has a lot of different connectors that you can add in. So, for example, there are third-party applications right now, for example, for SAP, and they've also introduced a lot over the past little while. For example, Zendesk, Slack, ServiceNow is a big one, Dynamics, and so forth. So that's great. So they're moving a lot in that direction. The other thing that you mentioned was Flow, and I hear about Flow a lot. Every client I talk to wants to know what's the deal with Flow and why would I want to use Nintex if Flow is free in my tenant. So I've only used Flow a bit, and being that I'm in a Microsoft headquarters right now, I'm going to go ahead and say it's wonderful.
You should come to my session then.
Yeah?
I'll be doing a session about Flow as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well then, why am I talking to you?
You should.
No, I should. I would like to. I need to learn more because so far the only way I'm using Flow is to trigger a, if I get an email to a particular account, I want it to automatically send that into a SharePoint list. As you know, in O365, in SharePoint Online, there's no longer document-enabled libraries, or email-enabled document libraries. So I use Flow for that and then trigger an Nintex form from that, or workflow. So what I usually tell clients is that, hey, if you can get away with using Flow, which is more for individual tasks at the moment, I'm sure that Microsoft is planning to make it big and extravagant and maybe eventually overtake Nintex, but I can't tell at the moment. Then by all means do so. But I actually see them as a partner together,
Yeah.
where you can use one to trigger the other and so forth to get what you need out of it.
Yeah.
I see Flow right now as a gateway drug to Nintex.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. So one way to call it. Okay.
Totally.
So the thing is that now with we have like Flow, and Flow actually does include like a lot of connectors, or as we call them, adapters. So how do you see actually Nintex also doing versus that? Because now, ever since, as I said earlier, that we are in a cloud-first, mobile-first world, so you need to be connected to the outside world, not only on-prem.
Right.
So how do you see Nintex doing at that area, like having connectors, adapters, and such stuff?
So at the last Nintex InspireX, which is now called Nintex Exchange, and in San Diego in February, they released something called Nintex Extensibility, which is going to be an additional way to add connections to any application you might need by using little snippets of code. It's fairly simple, walks you through it, and that means you can connect to anything you need very simply and save it so that your users can also make that connection whenever they need to. So I think that they're on the right path. They're going to make it very simple to connect everything you need in a business environment.
Okay. That's really cool. So also they will have other also connectors, not like Microsoft based, because from what I see, it is also like Microsoft. They're not only focusing on their products, like for example, to have connected with Office 365, or let's say other services they do have in the cloud, but also they could have like connectivity to like Google and other let's say cloud services that are available out there.
Totally. Yeah. This is going to make it so you can set up basically anything you need. And like I say, that they've got things out there like ServiceNow and Slack, Zendesk, those things that aren't, I believe, they aren't run, by Nintex or Microsoft. So they've got a lot of great things in there right now. And I know you can connect to things like, Great Plains. You can connect to, like I mentioned earlier, SAP. And it's all through like a web service call if you're in on-prem or O365, or through the connectivity in Nintex Workflow Cloud.
Yeah. Well, I've used Nintex myself, and it's pretty much a powerful workflow. But basically, I've used it on-prem, and now you actually you have actually enlightened us with how it actually functions as well in the cloud, how things going to be as well in the future. So we really thank you for this insights. Thank you for coming to this talk.
Thank you. I hope to make it to your talk today.
Yeah, thank you. And probably we'll see you at other SharePoint Saturdays.
Yes, I hope so.